Welcome to A Course in Miracles in Practice. We're really glad you're joining us today for an exploration of Workbook Lesson 342.
It's a critical lesson because it forces us to confront the thousands of small automatic judgments we make every day. These judgments really shape our perceptual world, often without our conscious input.
Right.
So today we're exploring how adopting a gentle state of forgiveness helps us interrupt that negative momentum and helps us return to the deep peace that is always available.
And if you have questions, comments, or any feedback on this lesson or any others, you can always reach us by email. The address is acim@theworldharmonyproject.org. We're also easy to find on TikTok. Our handle is @theworldharmonyproject. We really do appreciate hearing from you and integrating your insights into our discussion.
This is such a fundamental lesson. I think we should just dive right into the text itself.
Okay, let's do it. Forgiveness rests upon all things, for it is one with God.
Forgiveness is the light you chose to see, which saves the world from darkness and from me.
I would forgive, and let forgiveness rest upon all things, for thus shall it be given to me.
I come to you to learn the way to peace, and only your forgiveness offers me the way.
Brother, forgive me now. I come to you to take you home with me.
So the central idea that Lesson 342 introduces is just monumental. Forgiveness resting on all things.
It is.
This isn't just a casual recommendation. It represents a complete shift in spiritual practice. Most of us, when we think about forgiveness, we treat it like an emergency response system.
Right. Something goes wrong, someone offends us, we get hurt, and then we pull out forgiveness to fix that one specific problem.
Exactly. And the Course is asking for something fundamentally different. It's calling on us to stop seeing forgiveness as an action we apply to a specific mistake and instead to adopt it as a general state of mind.
A default setting.
A default setting for our perception. It becomes the lens through which we see every moment, not just the moments that seem to need correcting. This means the work is internal, and it has to happen before any perceived problem even shows up.
And that's the hard part, isn't it? Because making that shift from being reactive to proactive, it requires us to look at those really deep, unconscious thinking habits we all rely on. We all have them. The quick judgments, the automatic assumptions, the way we jump to a negative conclusion without really assessing what's going on. And these habits, they feel productive, almost protective.
That's the illusion, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Course teaches us that these habits create a certain mindset long before any actual issue appears in our world. Think of it like this. If you're constantly sorting the world into safe and dangerous or good and bad, you're prejudging everything.
Okay.
When forgiveness becomes your baseline mindset, those habitual reactions, well, they suddenly have nowhere to land. They lose their purpose.
So we stop preparing for something to go wrong.
That preparation, that habit of bracing, that's what the lesson is trying to dismantle. It's so ingrained that many people mistake it for realism or maybe even wisdom.
Sure. We tell ourselves, I'm not being negative. I'm just prepared for the worst. Or I'm just trying to avoid being surprised.
Exactly. But this bracing is a form of tension. It's a way of holding our spiritual and emotional muscles tight, always ready to absorb friction.
The moment you said bracing, I felt the tension in my own shoulders. We are always on some level of alert. If we see the world as inherently hostile or precarious, then that readiness feels mandatory.
And that necessity is self-imposed. When we allow forgiveness to genuinely rest on all things, that internal pressure just eases. The energy we spend being ready for a fight is liberated.
When you describe this constant alertness, this state of always being braced for friction, the phrase, the hell we made, becomes incredibly relatable.
It does.
It's not this dramatic fire and brimstone hell, but it's an anxiety-fueled state of perception. The anxiety comes from believing that the next moment or the next person might need controlling or defending against or judging.
That is precisely the Course's definition of hell. A state of mind that's maintained by conflict and defense. If you live in a universe where you believe control is necessary, you are going to be anxious because control is, by its very nature, impossible to maintain absolutely.
Right.
So the Course suggests that what a lot of people call awareness, being shrewd, being guarded, reading the room for danger, is really just fear dressed up in a practical disguise.
We're constantly viewing reality through a filter or some kind of screen.
The Course describes it as a veil we put over everything. And this veil ensures that we only perceive what supports our decision to stay guarded.
If we decide the world is dangerous, we'll only see evidence of danger.
The lesson is pointing out that this judgmental state is our own construct, and we are the ones who suffer from it.
So the good news is we already have the solution. The lesson says we have the key in our hand. And the key is simply the option to stop judging things that haven't even happened yet. It's the option to put down the veil.
Yes. The key is recognizing that our peace is internal, and it's independent of what happens outside of us. We aren't waiting for the world to stop presenting problems before we choose peace. We're choosing to stop judging the world as a source of problems. And this movement from conflict to peace is the foundational work of Lesson 342.
And if we can truly embrace that, if we can accept the idea that we can stop all the preemptive judgments, we might find ourselves moving toward a state that the Course calls heaven. But that transition itself, it feels radical, especially for those of us who have lived on high alert for decades.
That's a perfect segue, because the lesson explicitly addresses that feeling of change. It describes the door to heaven and implicitly how disorienting it is to stand on its threshold. It feels strange, even a little dangerous, to drop our guard.
Yeah, it does.
Our ego has invested so much in this steady alertness, believing it's the source of our survival. So to relax that vigilance feels like we're inviting catastrophe. And spiritual passivity, in the context of the Course, it's not apathy. It's the absence of resistance. Forgiveness, resting on all things, takes away the need for that alertness. If everything is forgiven, meaning nothing is seen as an attack or an error, then there's nothing left to guard against.
The lesson calls this state remembering.
We're remembering our true condition, the state of peace that exists underneath the anxious, reactive, defensive layer of all that ego chatter. That peace is permanent. It's our foundation. The ego's job is to make us forget it, to make us believe that peace is something we have to earn or fight for. The moment we drop the alertness, we stop fighting, and we simply remember that the peace was always there, untouched by our fearful thoughts.
And when you stop the fight, the mind relaxes. The constant ego chatter, that inner voice that's always organizing, worrying, strategizing, and condemning, it begins to simmer down. Its urgency diminishes.
That cessation of urgency is so key. A mindset of universal forgiveness allows us to stop filling every single moment with expectations. We spend so much mental energy trying to predict things, scanning the environment for cues, trying to guess what our next move should be.
We're constantly running these mental calculations. If this happens, I'll do that. If that person says this, I'll reply with that. We're always pre-scripting our reactions.
And Lesson 342 is instructing us to stop running that mental script. When we do, the resulting quiet, the absence of expectation, is profound. And that is what the lesson calls the doorway. And that leads us to the deeply moving final lines of the lesson. Brother, forgive me now. I come to you to take you home with me. This is where the practice of forgiveness becomes interpersonal. It's the recognition that the doorway to peace can't be entered alone. Salvation is inherently shared.
We maintain this vast internal database of grievances, small and large, that span our entire lives.
We hold on to these tiny yet potent judgments against countless people and situations. Think about the people who populate our past. Not necessarily enemies, but just people we judged as wrong or less than or threatening to our peace.
We could be talking about teachers who graded too hard, the babysitter who wasn't any fun.
Oh, man. Or the retail worker, the guy at Radio Shack who talked down to me about technology.
We're being asked to dissolve those divisions internally.
Exactly. The mind stops dividing itself into me and you, or good experience versus bad experience. The separation was always an internal mental construct. Once that primary split is healed, once we recognize that all these judgments were based on a mistaken perception, there's literally no part of the world left outside the healing process.
Forgiveness here isn't an act of charity towards another person. It's the end of dividing the world into parts we like and parts we don't like, which is the foundational work of the ego.
Right. The instant we forgive everything, those boundaries blur.
And makes the quiet of the doorway accessible.
Yes. The focus shifts entirely from managing external conflict to recognizing internal unity.
It sounds like the moment we stop labeling past events as defining us, and when we truly extend the state of forgiveness to all things, the result has to be a profound sense of integration. The Course calls this state the end of dreams. That's a powerful metaphor.
When the mind remembers its real unified state, the lesson says we are stepping into light. It's the recognition that the dream of conflict was self-imposed.
And this recognition is profound because once we accept forgiveness as the default, we remember who we are, a peaceful, non-fragmented self, because the judgmental noise we previously relied on to define reality is no longer running the show.
Right. The noise was the ego.
And this memory of self is never a solitary experience.
Never. We remember our oneness, and that memory inherently extends to every single one of our brothers and sisters. We bring them with us into the light, so to speak, because the separation we perceived was never real. We never left our true state, and they never left it either.
And that is the beautiful, non-negotiable principle of the Course. Salvation is shared. It's not a private, solitary achievement. You can't find peace while judging others as still being in conflict.
No, because if you judge another as needing forgiveness, you're still maintaining that splitting mechanism inside your own mind, and therefore you can't fully enter the doorway yourself.
Right.
We have to heal the separation completely, and forgiveness achieves that total inclusion. By letting forgiveness rest on everything, we ensure that no fragment of the dream remains outside of the light.
It's crucial, I think, to ground this discussion. The Course is profoundly realistic about human experience. It doesn't expect perfection immediately or even consistently. We're unlearning a habit.
That's so right. The Course knows we're going to return to old patterns. We will lapse. The process of unlearning is iterative. It's not instant. The goal is to shorten the gap between the judgment and the correction.
And we've been given clear instructions on this since the very beginning of the workbook. I'm thinking back to those phrases that really underscore this practice. Instructions that say, we will practice now and again, and we merely wait for willingness.
And do not be disturbed by lapses. These are foundational. They establish that this is a continuous process of returning.
Right. The ego is always ready to use a lapse as an excuse to give up completely. Oh, I judged someone harshly, I failed, so I might as well just stop practicing.
And the Course preempts that trap by normalizing imperfection and emphasizing persistence. The practice is the persistence.
And the most important phrase of all, which applies to any moment of perceived failure, is so simple. You choose again. Forgiveness isn't a grand singular decree. It's 100 small decisions we make throughout the day. When we notice we've lapsed into judgment, we simply choose again, right then.
The practice is simply noticing. We aren't asked to do some complex mental inventory of every mistake. We're just asked to notice when the peace is gone. That loss of peace is the unmistakable signal that we've stepped away from the generalized state of forgiveness.
It's a continuous act of gentle self-correction. It requires willingness, not brute willpower.
Think about how practical this is. When you're caught in a wave of anxiety or a spiral of judgment or a moment of defensiveness, you don't need to analyze the psychological roots of that feeling. You just need to recognize, I've stepped away from peace, and use that moment to choose the mind's natural state again.
And this brings us to the ultimate assurance provided by the Course. We cannot fail. If success is defined by the continual choice to return to the truth, then every single moment provides that opportunity.
Right. Even 1,000 lapses in one day are immediately canceled out by the 1,001st choice to return to the truth. Our inherent success is guaranteed by the nature of the choice itself.
We received a fantastic question from a listener that directly addresses the core conceptual shift of this lesson.
Okay, let's hear it.
The listener asks, I have always understood forgiveness as something I do when something goes wrong. How do I practice forgiving everything when nothing in particular seems wrong?
That is a brilliant question. It really is. Because it highlights the baggage we all carry concerning the word forgiveness. Most human spiritual systems define forgiveness as a transaction. I was wronged. I released the debt. The Course teaches that forgiveness isn't an action directed at another person or an external event. Instead, forgiveness is the mind releasing its own mistaken readings of the moment. We decide to stop projecting our fear and guilt onto reality.
It's an inner release of our own false perception, not a pardon for an external offense.
Even when nothing in particular seems wrong,
Right.
on the outside, the mind is still sorting, judging, predicting, imagining scenarios. It's doing a continuous inventory. Most of this continuous assessment happens in the background, below the level of conscious notice.
So, to practice forgiving everything when nothing seems wrong is simply to let the mind settle into its natural state of peace instead of being on alert. We're letting go of that internal job of scanning and defining.
Yeah, that's the essence of it. When you actively choose the state of forgiveness, you're choosing to release the necessity of vigilance. You stop bracing for friction. You stop scanning for hidden meanings. You recognize that the moment, even if it's quiet and neutral, doesn't need your correction, your prediction, or your fear.
And this brings us right back to that key phrase, letting forgiveness rest upon all things. Forgiveness isn't aimed at an injustice or a wrong or a specific person.
Forgiveness is a baseline state of mind.
I really hope that made things clear for our listener and for everyone who struggles with the idea that forgiveness has to be problem-focused. Thank you for that important question.
This exploration into Lesson 342 has really underscored the profound shift that's required. We've talked about how dropping those small automatic judgments releases mental tension, allowing us to stop the habitual bracing for conflict.
And we learned that this approach to forgiveness naturally includes everything. It removes the internal obstacles within our own minds, the judgments, the splitting, the sorting, so that salvation, which we recognize as shared, can be perceived without distortion.
We appreciate you spending this time with us as we explore these powerful teachings.
We truly appreciate doing this work together with you.
Before we go, here's a simple line to carry with you as you practice today's lesson. Today, I let forgiveness rest on everything I encounter.
We'll see you for the next lesson.
I woke up to a miracle today.